Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com. If you're like me, you spend a lot of time looking for diamonds in the rough, situations where the conventional wisdom is dead wrong, where the favorite is overvalued and the underdog, for whatever reason, is overlooked and is undervalued. Now, boxing is full of bouts where, from the opening bell, it was obvious that the underdog was undervalued and that the underdog was actually the fighter who had the superior hand speed, the superior foot speed, the superior technique, the superior brashness. I'll give you an example. Two fights come to mind. A generation ago, James Toney, then undefeated, against Roy Jones Jr., who was the underdog in that fight. Many people thought Roy Jones was not ready. From the opening bell, it became apparent that Roy Jones was a overlooked talent, that he was much better than we all realized, that he was certainly much better than James Toney was that night. Um, in an earlier generation, the heavyweight champion, the 7-1 favorite, Sonny Liston, over Ali. Take a look at the first round of that fight. Liston, the big bear they used to call him, was actually not as tall as Ali. Ali was not only the bigger man, Ali was also the faster man, the more mobile man. And in the first round, it's clear that Ali knew it. But in that first round, which is a masterpiece in my opinion, Ali stands in front of Liston and hardly throws a punch. In other words, Ali wasn't even thinking of getting in there and landing a lucky punch. He actually thought he owned Liston from the opening bell. I believe you might have a fight like that, and I say might because this is the highest risk of high risk. You might have a fight like that taking place this weekend, and it's a big fight. It, to me, is a more meaningful fight in boxing, possibly than the Miguel Cotto Yuri Foreman fight taking place in the Bronx. This is the fight between two unbeaten welterweights. The European champion, the man they call Mini Tyson, the man who fights out of Turkey, and this fight is in his backyard in Turkey, and that's Selcuk Aydin, and he is fighting a Romanian fighter who fights out of Canada, who has appeared on ESPN's Friday Night Fights, a guy by the name of Jojo Dan. This is supposed to be a king-making fight for Aiden. He is a huge favorite. Jojo Dan is a greater than 2-1, in fact, 3-1. In fact, he's a greater than 4-1 underdog in this fight. I believe there's a distinct possibility, right? A distinct possibility that if, and it's a big if Jojo Dan can survive the first 3 rounds of this fight, I believe there is a distinct possibility that the greater than 4-1 underdog can turn this fight into a mismatch in his favor, right? There is a possibility that Aiden cannot handle Jojo Dan's hand speed, combination punching, volume, and foot speed. It's astonishing to me in a close fight to see the fighter I consider to have the better skill set actually go off at a greater than 4-1 underdog in American casinos. So I hope you give the fight a look. Let's talk about the two fighters. Jojo Dan is like Sergio Martinez. He's like Ali. In other words, His fighting style is eccentric. Understand, the great ones, I'd say at least 80% of the time, they're outside the paradigm. They break the rules, right? Just like Sergio Martinez in a fight against the slugger, Kelly Pavlik, who was viewed as bigger than Sergio Martinez. Just like Martinez dropped his hands and danced around in front of slugger Kelly Pavlik, a guy with one punch knockout power, right? Just like Ali, stands in front of Sonny Liston, uh, hardly throws a punch. And Liston at that time had destroyed Floyd Patterson, I believe, in consecutive fights in one round. Um, that's the kind of mindset that Jojo Dan has. Understand, the idea of beating Aydin, an undefeated fighter, in his country of Turkey is just completely preposterous to begin with. To try to do it with Jojo Dan's fight style, where he's not even the puncher in the fight, he's not going to go for a knockout. He's going to try to box the socks off Aydin, right? To be that brash and to believe that completely in your boxing ability is off the page. That's the personality type. You know how Floyd Mayweather is hesitant to throw more than a two-punch combination because he doesn't want to leave himself open for counterpunching. Just imagine a guy who is so cocky, is so brash, that he'll stand in front of you and he'll throw 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 punch combinations, and he does it with both hands. In other words, the guy will leave himself open. He's a reckless fighter. He'll leave himself open to get in his shots, and he doesn't even have a knockout punch. Now, to many, that's lunacy, right? I've looked at the guy's films, and I think this might be brilliance. I think the world might be upside down on this one. I think gamblers looking for viable long shots, and that's what this guy is, should take a hard look at the plus 425 Jojo Dan. Because Jojo Dan, in my opinion, just might knock off Selcuk Aydin in Turkey. And I think that a tip-off are the scorecards of the three judges in Aydin's fight against Sugar Jackson. You're going to see that Aydin in that fight, and he is heavy-handed, knocked down Jackson in 3 different rounds. But curiously, the fight was very close on 2 of the 3 judges' cards, and that fight was in Turkey. In other words, while Aydin is blessed with heavy hands, he's not blessed with boxing skills to win rounds when he's not, dropping you to the canvas, right? And so a fighter with movement, volume, who can get in and out and who can fight from distance, and yes, Jojo Dan has a jab, could literally cause Aydin a lot of problems. This is a problematical style matchup, just like Yuri Foreman will be a style matchup problem for Miguel Cotto. That's a tough fight, right? I don't know why Cotto's favored in that fight. Here, Jojo Dan's combination punching and hand speed and superior boxing ability is going to be a nightmare for the heavier-handed Selcuk Aydin. But make no mistake, my pick is the underdog, and he is a long shot underdog. He's a 4-1 underdog. To put it in perspective, Bernard Hopkins was only a 3-1 underdog when he fought a then unbeaten Kelly Pavlik. You need to proceed with caution, but if you're looking for a viable long shot to just fool around with not your bankroll, but your experimental portion of your bankroll, then I like the underdog in this fight. I like Jojo Dan. Let me know your thoughts. Leave them for me at gamblersadvisory.com and here on YouTube. If I'm wrong, punish me in the ratings. If I'm right,